part of Locked On Sports Atlanta on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Hawks postcast, your home for the best Atlanta Hawks talk. It's local insight you can't get anywhere but right here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tenitra, Batiste. Alongside me is DeShaun, Tate. Tonight's episode is sponsored by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. The Locked On Hawks postcast is also part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the Hawks 2024-25 campaign is officially underway, and it may have taken until 6.5 minutes left in regulation, but a couple of dust-ups helped the Hawks finally pull away for the 120-116 win over the Nets. So let's get right into it with Tate and T's takes. So Tate, you said your take on this Atlanta Hawks Brooklyn Nets game was this. You were looking for good defense, and you got maybe average defense?
Yeah, I got some. I got a little bit. I ain't get as much as I expected. You know, Tenitra, with the moves that they made during the offseason or lack thereof, you would have expected that it's kind of like we're anticipating a game between two rebuilding teams without either team really admitting to it so much. So I'm like, all right, clearly the moves that they're making, if not anything else, that we're pretty confident and assured of, that we have been also told, is that they really want to start ramping up things defensively. They're going out and getting wings. They're drafting wings. They're acquiring guys and that are, you know, long and athletic and can play multiple positions. Defensive guys, Dyson Daniels, Risacher, ... So I know that the expectation is kind of unrealistic. I was expecting to maybe see like an A+ without realistically expecting to see an A+. But I gave him a C on the defense on tonight. I know that Cam Thomas is a hell of a scorer and one of the best that I think underrated and underappreciated that we have in this league. Seeing him go off for somewhere nearly close to 40 is a bit much for me. I get it. It's game one, so we don't want to overreact on anything, but I think sometimes it's okay to say we don't want to underreact because defense is effort, defense is technique. I didn't see all of what I wanted on the defensive end, but they did need to make some key defensive stops down the stretch. They did that, hence why we're looking at a 120-116 4-point lead for the Hawks, who add a number to the left side of the result column. So if they can't say nothing else, Tenitra, they are undefeated, and everybody after tonight can't say the same thing.
Oh, DeShaun, the optimism. I love it. Next, he'll be saying that, hey, they can actually go 82-0, but I digress. So, yeah, I mean, you can kind of say there were some positives on the defensive side of the ball. Obviously, they got some key stops when they needed it, but sometimes Brooklyn kind of stopped themselves because, I don't know, for me, it was, I would say I'd go with the average, or I think you'd mentioned like a C for a grade for defense, because the Brooklyn Nets still shot 44% from the field. And yes, a lot of that had to do with Cam Thomas. They almost shot 40% from three. So for me, that was a little bit of, and I saw that in person, had an opportunity to get to the game tonight. And some of those were some uncontested shots. I felt like there should have been a little bit more contesting of those shots. And even inside, sometimes it felt like the Hawks were just saying, oh, okay, well, you're coming in the paint. Yeah, go ahead and do you. And then, you know, as soon as you hit that shot, or maybe if you miss the shot, we might try to get the shot and, you know, see if we can get something going. And the reason I say it that way is because I was still kind of looking at it from, you know, the rebounding side of the ball, because I felt like in terms of the offensive rebound, they were kind of what and what, right? But defensively, you kind of got, you kind of let them get a little bit ahead of you. And it evened out in the end, but I still felt like defensively, I wanted to see just a little bit more, because yes, you get all these guys who are basically wing players, but shouldn't they also be like wing defenders? So shouldn't you have that those long and lean players that you got to get out there and be able to shoot from three? Shouldn't they be able to defend from three as well? So like you, I'm still looking for that to ramp up a little bit more. But there was one thing that I liked, and the take for me is probably going to be much the same take, at least I hope, for these Hawks throughout the duration of the season, and that's with Onyeka Okongwu. We told you guys a couple nights ago that 00 hadn't played in like 7 months. And I said that I like the early returns that I saw from him, DeShaun, in that last preseason game against the Thunder. And granted, 9 points, 4 rebounds, a block, but it was only 16 minutes of action. But then you get to see it again tonight. I really liked what I saw from Onyeka Okongwu. I thought that he came out aggressive. He scored 28 points in just 28 minutes, 11 to 12 shooting from the field. I love that coming off the bench, no doubt. And Double O also had 8 rebounds, so he was right there at the precipice of a double-double, 2 blocks. And despite the Hawks, with their abysmal shooting from the free throw line that we're going to talk about a little bit later, Okongwu was just the opposite. He was a perfect 6 for 6. So I really felt like Double O came to make a statement tonight, and he understood the assignment. He made his statement, and I really, really liked what I saw out of Onyeka Okongwu tonight.
No question. Led by example, especially off the bench. And that is probably the guy, especially, I guess, since we have DeAndre Hunter in the starting lineup.
Yeah,
you
very
see me rolling my eyes. But that's what you expect out of a guy like Onyeka Okongwu. You paid him some good amount of money not too long ago. We know he's a liability sometimes from an IR standpoint during the season. Sometimes that can be a little more extensive timing of it than I like it to be. But when he checks in the game, I need him to be that spark off the bench, and not just against when they're playing the Milwaukee Bucks and Giannis Antetokounmpo. And he looked like that type of player on tonight. And the only thing you can do is ask for him to do it one game at a time. And since only one game has been played, then I don't really have too many, gripes about him. He came in with some energy. He was definitely very active. A lot of times he came through there like a bat out of hell, able to get some follow up on some dunks and getting kind of emotional. I think there was part of the second dust up in the fourth quarter between him and Cam Thomas. And I mean, so, I think that's where we started noticing a little bit more of just, I learned the little things during times like that, when it looks like the Brooklyn Nets knew that they probably weren't going to win this game, even though they were in striking distance. And when a team knows that they can't beat you or not better than you or whatever the case may be, they try and get in your head by running their mouth and starting to play a little bit on the dirty side. Listen to the guy who grew up loving the Detroit Pistons talking about players that play a little bit dirty, but it kind of seemed like they kind of gave the Atlanta Hawks a little bit of a slap in the face that the Hawks needed to kind of toughen up a little bit. And sometimes I feel like over the years, that's something that this Hawks team has needed. I'm glad that it happened in game 1 before we let too many games go by. And then we start saying, where was this at X amount of months ago? So it happened tonight. And I hope that carries over into the next game against Charlotte on Friday.
Yeah, I thought I saw a little edge that I liked as well. And we'll talk a little bit about that later in the game, in the show. But I wanted to ask you something that you just mentioned, kind of want to get your thoughts on it, because when we were, obviously all the players were introduced tonight because it was the season opener. But then of course the starters were introduced last. And so I'm looking, waiting to see what's going to happen. And all of a sudden I see DeAndre Hunter is a part of the starting lineup. I wasn't ready for that, because most of what he talked about in the offseason, when you look at what he talked about as well during the media day, if you will, he was talking about embracing his role of coming off the bench. And granted, there's probably going to be that time where he goes back to the bench and still may play heavy minutes from the bench. And granted, 26 minutes in the starting lineup tonight, 12.6 rebounds and 2 steals. So, hey, a solid night from DeAndre Hunter. But I just thought that was interesting because I wasn't expecting to necessarily see Dre in the starting lineup tonight.
Yeah, me neither, to be honest with you. I just, you know how I am about Dre coming off the bench. And I told you when we had our last show for the last game of the preseason that, hey, why are you going out there picking up number 1 picks and not putting them into the starting lineup? Like, if there's not another team with another roster that can match up to it and show us that they're looking to maybe go some sort of just a different direction, whether people think it's a better direction or a worse direction, it's still a different direction. And that different direction has gotten you a number 1 pick. And that's what I expect to be out there. I do anticipate that he will slowly move into the direction as he continues to improve, get the butterflies out and everything else to be in the starting lineup. But we ended up getting Dre tonight. Obviously, we got Dyson Daniels, a guy who's his first time playing a regular season game in a Hawks uniform. He went completely off. I know we're going to talk about it in one of the segments coming up, but he looked like he's been playing for the Hawks for years. And I think that that's saying something because of the short sample size in terms of time that he has to develop and establish chemistry with the team.
Indeed, indeed. Well, we had a lot of new look Hawks out there tonight, and we want to talk a little bit about how they impressed, or maybe not, but mostly impressed. We'll discuss when we come back in the AM1. This episode of our Locked On Hawks postcast is brought to you by FanDuel. So, NFL fans, you can continue the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Obviously, we're going into the second third of the NFL season, and man, it's getting to be really interesting and really, really intriguing because there's only one team that remains undefeated in the league. So a lot of good competition throughout the NFL. Now, when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, let's just say maybe you're watching that Atlanta Falcons, Tampa Bay Buccaneers game Sunday, a rematch of a game about a week and a half ago that the Falcons triumphed in overtime. Well, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com. Again, it's the perfect time to jump in because we're going into the second third of the NFL season, and we know you want big returns on FanDuel. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, maybe you're getting a hunch that, hey, there's some banged up Bucks out there, a few banged up Falcons as well, but ultimately this Falcons team is looking to bounce back and reset from a tough loss Sunday. So if you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets, maybe you get a hunch that the Falcons team will indeed bounce back from a loss to the Seahawks. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first dollar bet at FanDuel.com because FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. So DeShaun, the day finally came, and it was so interesting because when the players were introduced at the beginning of the game, obviously you had certain players who got a little bit more thunder. Bogdan Bogdanovic is a fan favorite, so obviously he got a lot of love, if you will. Trae Young is Trae Young, and so he is the leader, the star, the superstar of this team, if you will. So he got a lot of love. Zaccharie Risacher got some love as well when he came out, but when he entered the game, DeShaun, the arena erupted. It was just a cool thing to see that excitement because this was, we're one of those cities, in case you guys don't know, some of our fans who might be outside of Atlanta, this city shows up, how do I say nicely? This city, they don't know how to come for opening tip. All they know how to do is pull up in about the end of the first quarter or maybe the beginning of the second quarter, right? So by the time Risacher entered the game, the arena, the lower bowl was pretty much full and it was absolute bedlam. But when he hit that first shot, I think his first shot was a made three. It was absolute chaos in there. And it was a good chaos. It was exciting to see. Now, and a 2-pointer, actually, he made his first field goal. Now, don't get me wrong. Certainly, no, I'm right. 3-pointer.
It was a 3.
It was a 3. He finishes the night with 7 points. But ultimately, for you, DeShaun, what did you like about what you saw in his performance overall tonight?
Well, just the confidence, because not only did he check into the game and hit a 3, but I think he did it in like the first 20 seconds of getting into of checking into the game. And it was like, hey, give me the ball, and I like that, especially sometimes when you get guys that are international players sometimes, or just players in general, not necessarily just international players, but still trying to familiarize themselves with the NBA game and just the speed of the game and everything else. You want to make sure you're checking all the boxes and doing all the right things, going through the motions, swinging the ball around a couple times, get it in your hands, pass it around. He came out just firing and was like, hey, I'm #1 pick for a reason kind of thing. And I like that. Especially if this is a team that kind of want to get shots up the way that they say that they do. So no, I think that was, definitely good for him, and just, seeing the team kind of corral around him and give him a little bit of boost of confidence. And you can tell that they're like, hey, go out there and just kind of keep shooting, because that's one of the things he does well. And he's also moving very well without the basketball. I think he had he was cutting for what looked like I expected to be a layup, and it kind of shocked me a little bit, kind of almost jumped out of my seat because he dunked it with 2 hands coming through the lane, little things like that. And so it was interesting to see that that he came out like that, because he's been coming out like that ever since I put eyes on him for the very first time in a preseason game, even in the summer league. I mean, he came right out the gate like that. So I honestly, I like that out of him. It's nice to be able to have a guy, not last name being Hunter, who you almost have to grab them around their necks and kind of force them to, muster up some kind of certain level of confidence to go out there and be bold and show everybody the reasons behind why you were picked so high in the draft. So I thought that was ultimately good for Risacher, and it was just a good look for the Hawks all around.
Yeah, I was very excited about the fact that, like you said, he came out with confidence. The team allowed him to just be who he is and kind of get a feel for the game. And I think those are all things that are very, very important for a guy that essentially, like you said, it won't be long before we see him enter the starting lineup. So the expectations are high for him. But at least what we saw tonight was a guy who seemed very poised and seemed like he could handle the pressure. But he wasn't the only newbie that, I don't know about you, but I was certainly impressed with. I know when the Hawks, when we found out or got the news that Dyson Daniels was coming to Atlanta, I know I was excited. I remember you talking about Dyson Daniels back in his college days. So I was like, okay, this was a guy that DeShaun had some positive things to say, back in his college days. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, now I kind of sort of want to see, what he's able to bring to the table. And I thought that he also had a pretty nice night, ending the night with 15 points. And again, now I did expect to see him in the starting lineup, and we did see him in the starting lineup, and he had a nice night, 6 of 12 from the field, and also had a good night as well, picking up some nice boards, because I know that's something that you and I are going to be paying attention to very closely throughout the season. What is the commitment to defense? He also had 5 steals on the night. I think that's very important as well.
Extremely important, because that's what you went and made some of the decisions that you made for. It gives you kind of that feeling of, we didn't just make a move on DeJounte Murray for like a bag of peanuts. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got a guy who, I mean, what else can you ask for? I didn't expect, I'm not sure if anybody expected someone like a Dyson Daniels, who's not like he's a veteran in this league and he's been around for a long time. Right. I mean, he's come into Atlanta after a very short stint somewhere else, I believe in New Orleans, and came out and gave you 15 points. Not only gave you the 5 steals that you really needed from him, but also gave you some more balance in just from a shooting standpoint. 50% from the field on tonight, I think, and 50% from 3 and 5 rebounds on top of that. Sounds very well-rounded.
Yes.
It looks, I mean, the future looks bright. Again, it's just one game. I get it. I understand it. I overstand it, in fact. But, there's some other guys who's, suiting up on tonight and last night for their very first time in a new uniform, and they're not even giving you half of what he was able to give tonight. So I think that I think it's really hard to not give Dyson Daniels an A+, at least based off of what my expectations were coming into tonight.
I would agree with you, because he was someone that I was very excited about. I mean, I was, of course, disappointed to see DeJounte Murray move on to the New Orleans Pelicans, because I really liked the acquisition, regardless of whether or not it worked out here. I still thought that DeJounte was a quality player, and I think we're going to see DeJounte kind of return a little bit to form in that Pels uniform. But as much as I was disappointed to see DeJounte Murray go, I was very intrigued, very interested, and very excited about what Dyson Daniels was able to do. And Charles Menifee says the same. Hey, Charles, what's up? Welcome back for the 2024-25 season. Appreciate you as always. And you said you like Daniels, you like the 00, got to work on the free throws. We agree with you. We said the same. We loved what 00 was able to do, but you do have to get back to basics. You got to make sure that you take care of the little things, because real talk, DeShaun, this is one of those games where the Hawks shot fine from the field 48% of the night, acceptable from the perimeter 32% of the night, but 72% from the free throw line. For me, that's not acceptable. 16 turnovers, you got to clean that up, because that's the type of thing that keeps teams in games that they shouldn't be in, not this close. We should not have been saying 41 seconds left in this game, saying 41 seconds left in regulation. No, I don't want to have that. I want to just be saying 41 seconds left in the game, because 41 seconds left in regulation means that you gave them too much of an opportunity to get back in.
For sure. And I think we all know that every night, like I said before, is not going to be against a team like the Brooklyn Nets. You got to start somewhere. That's just kind of
Yeah.
how I look at it. But when you're talking about Dyson Daniels, how about the fact that, when he went up for that layup on a fast break and then Nicholas Claxton kind of clotheslined him or what have you, and then they kind of got into each other's faces that kind of extended out as far as into the crowd. I mean, I like guys to have a little bit of edge to them, right? And guys that can stand up for themselves and not
Hold
just get
that
up
thought.
and
Hold
think
that
it's
thought.
okay.
We got to talk
I
about
know,
it.
I know we're gonna talk about it on the next one. I was just happy to see that he just didn't back down. We didn't acquire a player that was gonna be looking like he was gonna be backing down to somebody.
Now we acquired somebody who we knew was going to nuck and buck, just like we saw him do tonight. And we're going to talk about that in Who Got Next. This episode of our Locked On Hawks postcast is also brought to you by Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Think about this. Priority Game Time Picks curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and so much more. And the seat views give you a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Game Time also has a ticket coverage policy where if your purchase is covered, it's because it's the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry, and they have a lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase, and take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Now, terms do apply, but again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today, of course, after you watch Locked On Hawks, the postcast, because what time is it? It is game time. All right, DeShaun, you were chomping at the bit in the first segment, chomping at the bit in the second segment. So now I got to give it to you so you can jump all over it. Now, here in Atlanta, we say Atlanta influences everything. Atlanta is just different. Maybe we are, maybe we do, because I can't think of another city where the arena DJ plays Knuck If You Buck.
Yeah.
When the opposing team gets a flagrant two, commits a flagrant two. And it was one of those things where Dyson Daniels was like, nah, bro, it's not going down like that. And then, as if that wasn't enough, we have another dust up about a minute or so later. And Onyeka Okongwu was like, nah, I'm not about that life of backing down. So he pulls up and he's like, what? And so literally it was like, Knuck If You Buck. And I'm from Louisiana, so there's this little like phrase or phase called jigging, right? And when somebody's jigging, it's about to be on. So then my boy Mo, shout out to Mo, he plays jigging, and I'm like, this is crazy. But real talk, what I like about it is that you and I have been talking about where's the edge in this team, where's the dog in this team.
That's
been
right.
talking about it the last couple seasons. I don't know about you, DeShaun, but I felt like some dogs were kind of pulling up tonight.
Well, you know what, Tenitra, besides the fact that I just learned a new term on tonight, jigging, I'm gonna have to take that one from you. Yeah, I'm gonna have to take that page out of your answer key out of your notebook. But I think sometimes I feel like tonight is exactly what happened. Right? It's almost as if like, all right, we can have a clean game, a clean, fun game. Everybody enjoying themselves. People start confusing the South country cool, Southern hospitality. But if you turn us the right way, like we can really turn up on you for real. And that's kind of exactly what happened. And like I said before, I thought that was something that I thought lit a fire or a match a little bit more underneath Atlanta by saying, you know what, not only are we going to beat you, but we're going to make sure. We're going to put the exclamation point on this. I think we ended up seeing another dunk by Onyeka Okongwu not long after that, and just some really big time highlight plays that kind of put the stamp on this game. And so I think that is something that they can muster up and go into the next game. Sometimes these are the little things that transpire that makes you kind of learn a little bit more about the team, and you learn a little bit about personalities of guys, because if not nothing else, we're not going to take that. There was a guy named Ivan Johnson that played here at one point in time that I swear I wish was still on this roster because he just wasn't taking nothing from nobody. And I'm not sure that we've seen, actually, I am sure that we hadn't seen a lot of that from very many guys since he was no longer in the Atlanta Hawks uniform. But it was just good to see someone muster up that energy and channel that same Ivan Johnson type of energy to say, you know what? We're not just going to let you slap us around and do whatever you want to do to us. So I thought that also kind of made a statement a little bit to say, if you're going to beat us, then you're going to beat us. But I guarantee you one thing, we're not going down, win, lose, or draw, or anything in between without a fight.
Yeah, and I think, too, it shows that early cohesion where, hey, you're not going to try to punk my teammate. I have his back, and I think that's a beautiful thing. And one of the guys, who always comes to mind for me, or two of the guys really would be like a Solomon Hill. Solo was not, he was about that.
Solo.
Not to do is punk anybody on this team. And Dwayne Dedmon was that dude. Like nobody was coming through, when if Dwayne Dedmon had something to say about it, wasn't happening. So Falcon 77 says Daniels impressed tonight. And I agree with you. I think that Dyson Daniels impressed in a number of ways. I think he impressed with his play, but also in standing his ground at some critical moments in that game in the end when it got a little chippy, when it got a little tight. Because remember, 6.5 minutes out, the Hawks kind of sort of looked like they were ready to walk away with this thing. They were up 10 points, biggest lead of the game. And then all of a sudden, it just kind of goes into this back and forth weirdness for like the last 6 minutes. So yeah, sometimes it takes just that little oomph, or it takes just that little extra thing that you do that is intangible that makes a team understand what you said earlier, which is, tonight, not tonight. We're not going down. Yeah, you kept it close, but it's not happening that way. And speaking of, there are times when I like Petty. There are times when I love Petty. And sometimes, I know it's not nice to say, but sometimes Petty is just the funniest thing to me. So I got to give a shout out to a guy that does Petty better than almost anybody I know when it comes to cracking a microphone. And that is one Steve Holman, who I've had the privilege of working with during the time that I have worked for the Hawks organization. We also sit on the selection committee, because of course he's a Hall of Famer for the Georgia Sports Hall of Fame. We sit on the committee together in the selection process, and he's just really good people. Never ever has he turned me away if I've had a question for him, big or small. And I appreciate him, and just, man, being an Iron Man like he is, DeShaun. So shout out to the Iron Man, who is Steve Holman, who called his 3,000th game in a row tonight, but also who will tell you, don't play with him. Do not play with Steve Holman, because he's going to call you out, Dennis Schroeder. So, of course, at the end of the game, when Dennis Schroeder tries to make something happen, Trae Young comes and he swats the ball out. And Steve Holman just reminded Dennis Schroeder, hey, not in the ATL. Like, we don't really care for that here in Atlanta. So, yeah, Dennis Schroeder, thanks for stopping by. Have a nice night on your way out of ATL.
And I think the thing that made it just that much more sweeter, Tenitra, is the fact that Dennis Schroeder used to play here in Atlanta. So that just made everything just that much more better on top of that. No, I thought that was great. I thought that was awesome. And again, congratulations to Steve for his, 3,000th consecutive. Obviously, I put in some work with him over the years as well.
Yes.
We're doing some work together, and just a really nice guy. And I think that he kind of mentioned when I was listening to the radio broadcast earlier this evening that, some of those calls to keep this streak going were not always during the most ideal circumstances all the time. He missed out on some very important things, or continued to make sure that he did some very important things while still having to call the game. And that wasn't always easy. And so I definitely take my cap off and congratulate him on the fine job that he's done for 40 seasons. I'm 40 years old. He's been doing this thing for as long as I've been alive. So it's just a blessing to be able to meet somebody who works that hard.
Yeah, and it is a reminder of the sacrifices that we make in this business. We always say it looks good, it looks like it's fun, and it is fun. And it looks like, but it's not all glamour. There are definitely some sacrifices that many of us make. And for you to be able to stand 40 years strong and go 3,000 straight calls,
right?
It's unbelievable. And like, you got to tip your hat to him being able to do such a thing and being able to see this team celebrate him by at least going 1-0 to start the season off. Well, they will try to make it 2-0 come Friday when these Atlanta Hawks host the Charlotte Hornets. Come right back because we're going to be here Friday night to break it all down after the game. Locked On Sports Atlanta is the #1 place to hang out after every game. Why not? So remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And for more on the Hawks, check out Locked On Hawks with our guy, Brad Rowland. We'll see you next time.